guys, thanks for joining us this week. My name's Chris.
Hey, and I'm Casey. What are we doing? What are we talking about this week, Chris?
Thanks for joining us. We're going to go through this week's headlines, and then we're going to talk about electric vehicles. I know you're excited.
Sweet. I am.
Yeah. All right, guys, here's the headlines from the week. Amazon surpasses Walmart as the world's largest retailer. Casey, did you see this coming?
Not exactly, although I don't follow that. We're in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
I should follow it more, but there's probably a lot of upset people in this neck of the woods up here. But what's separate from this, have you seen the Amazon retail stores?
Yeah,
that's what I saw.
Really interesting.
And I was telling you earlier, I had a really good experience with I did my first Amazon return at a Whole Foods, and it's like, yeah, that's a good thing. They've got good stuff going. So no, I'm not terribly shocked.
It feels like one of those things that was kind of inevitable, but with the recent moves that the Walmart administration has made, I think this is going to be, handed off like the scoring title in a Big 12 championship game from 10 years ago. Right. I think it's going to go back and forth for several decades. But the announcement of the Walmart stores, after they killed retail, they're about to build back their own. So it's very interesting to see that cycle happen.
Yep.
Next, we have Steve Jobs confirmed that Apple was working on an iPhone Nano as early as 2011.
So this is in the big Apple versus Epic lawsuit.
Yeah, there was a discovery with all the emails.
The emails, have now been leaked, and there was confirmation in the form of like an agenda of the iPhone Nano plan. They don't know much more about it than the fact that it was mentioned, and Johnny Ive was going to come present a model,
a dummy or
an
a
unapologetically plastic
some
model.
Screen.
Yeah, and this is cool. I hadn't followed the story of it much, but people had talked about it. I saw someone mention like maybe it was based on an iPod Touch, although I thought an iPhone was based on an iPod. I mean, they were so similar. But I'm curious as to what that would have looked like. Always interesting to find stuff like that.
It's cool to kind of see that glimpse back, and it's funny to now, we do have an iPhone Nano. It's the Apple Watch, right?
Well, and how long after that was it when the, what was the smaller form factor iPhone came out? Was it after the 5?
Well, then there was was it the SE was the first one?
The SE is the one I'm thinking of, where they had, that's the first model where they did
really
a smaller than the previous, smaller version phone.
Acknowledge that people might want something else besides something bigger and faster with a better battery life.
And that was probably 6 years later.
Yeah,
that happened.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking about product cycle, it's so interesting that, that's the kind of places they were 5 and 6 years before we even got there.
Yep.
Up next in phone news, Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3. Have you taken any time and reviewed the foldable phones?
I don't. I watched. We both watched Marques Brownlee.
Yeah.
So I watched the one they did on the. Is it it's the Z? Not the Z Flip. The Z Fold. I'm thinking the big one. As you see, this is how you know I'm talking about. Not this one. No, this one.
This one.
They're cool looking. I don't understand it. I personally don't get the utility of it. I have a tablet and a phone. I've never once wished that I could fold one into the other,
Did you ever watch Westworld? Were you a Westworld guy?
Yeah.
Remember Bernard's
tablet?
They
had the tablet.
Every time Bernard folded out the tablet, I was like, I want one.
I see why. I see it being, that's what I see. I see it and I go like, well, this is a cool set piece, Not for me, but people are into it. The folds are really impressive. The screen, as it's folding, there's not some visible crease or less light. It's,
I think, Apple's got some patents out for this too. It's definitely going to be something in the marketplace at some point, and so it's just interesting to see what early adoption looks like.
So this particular one, the Z Flip 3, is a throwback to everyone that's still rocking your Motorola Razr, and you want the actual clam style flip open phone. It opens that way.
Yeah, the coolest guy in my college had a Razr before everyone else.
Razr and a Mustang.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he did okay for himself. The most important update this week is that the once doomed Microsoft Paint is going to get its first redesign and a relaunch in over a decade.
The pictures look good. This is millennials are now in a position, right? This is defines it. We are the generation that decided to reboot everything and just leverage nostalgia to the max. And I don't exactly know why we were the ones to do that, but apparently the previous generations left us a whole lot of things to explore. And now Paint's next. It looks cool. It looks like Adobe Sketch or something like that.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not a Microsoft guy. We've talked about that before, but it's cool. Yeah.
My first corporate job out of school, they wouldn't let me have Photoshop or any of the Adobe products, any InDesign or anything like that I could try and jack together a solution for, but they would let me have Paint. And so the first social media images I edited for online for this multi-million
Was this for a Fortune 500 company?
Corporation were with Paint. So you're welcome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was good times. Next, Facebook.
Sorry, I just have an animal crawling on me.
It happens.
Just take care of that. Yeah, we're good now.
Animal-free zone, except for these animals. Up next, Facebook surprise launches a new VR meeting app with virtual desktops and up to 50 people. We kind of start to see in this story Facebook's plan for Oculus all along, which I think is just jacking us all into the Second Life Matrix.
Yeah, and then pumping us full of misinformation. Have you
Didn't
done?
they do that already?
Oh, that's right. That's true. They did, but it was 2D.
Yeah, it was 2D.
Yeah, it was
we weren't wearing goggles with it.
Have you done a virtual desktop VR thing yet?
I've done the VR experience. I haven't done the seeing other people, document sharing. I haven't done.
Have you done like a looking at my computer screen?
I have
VR
not.
experience. All right, so
and you guys have, right?
Yeah, Tyrell, our director of engineering, and I tried when we first went remote. We both are Quest 1 users. We don't have the Quest 2. So maybe that's part of it because the resolution's lower.
Yeah.
We were like, we'll buy everybody a Quest if we can find some way. We're trying to reproduce office culture and like whiteboarding conference rooms. And so we tried some of the other products out there. This is, of course, a Facebook device that we're talking about here. And the experience was rough. It was, there's motion problems for people that are sensitive to it, may have trouble with it. You're sitting stationary. The resolution on that particular device was such that like I would get a headache after a couple of hours of trying to look at a screen because it's like it looks big in 3D world, but it's highly pixelated, and higher resolution devices may do a better job of that. I don't know, new hardware may improve it, but I'm skeptical. They also have like, it looks really neat. There's whiteboarding and it shows people like drawing with a pencil, but I tried to whiteboard in it. It is not like writing with a real pencil. It is really difficult to get any sort of articulation out of it. And so I'm very skeptical of that being more than a novelty. But
I think that this is going to happen. I feel like that remote engagement experience.
Yeah.
But I've been much more impressed with Microsoft's work in this field. I don't know if you've seen any of theirs. They have a Halo and then kind of a holodeck experience where it's not everyone doesn't have to have a VR headset. Some people can have AR glasses.
Okay.
And so you can overlay things on top of that experience. Think about a car mechanic getting remote help from somebody at the dealership. And then think about people in a distributed workforce being able to all sit down and see the same whiteboard in augmented reality on their wall, but then they're still looking at their computer when they turn their head.
The thing is, that's what I think that worked well in the times that I've tested this, is that consuming information is good.
Yeah.
Reading is good.
Yeah.
Writing and putting it back out in the VR experience was where it was really challenging.
Which is where, like, I think we've, I don't want to say mastered, but we've really mastered the viewing experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, the chips are small enough, the screens are good enough, we can figure out viewing really well.
Yeah.
I think it's that interactive piece and the latency piece across networks that we really have to figure out.
Yeah.
And I know Facebook's trying to get out in front of this one, but I think Microsoft's the company to watch in here. And then, of course, Apple will have some, slam bang product that we have to take out a second mortgage to afford for the first one.
Yep.
Up next, chip shortages restrict all car manufacturing, especially EVs. Casey, what do you see coming down the line with this?
I had already heard about all the Ford F-150 Lightnings. We've got a client up in Kansas City. We're up there and we're just talking about them parked waiting for chips. Yeah, now it's worse. More chip shortages. And it's not just EV makers that are feeling
it's all the way.
But like, what's crazy about this is when you read about, you think about something that has this kind of supply chain logistics, it's the effects of this are very long. They're shutting down plants.
Yeah.
Therefore, workers are being furloughed. Therefore, you have dealer lots empty, but you have warehouses full, and it just like it's like a giant, just a train or like a caterpillar.
Yes.
Stop, start. And so it's really wild, but this is mostly COVID related.
Yeah,
is my understanding of it. COVID surges in countries that are integral to the chip supply chain, but
Southeast Asia, almost specifically. It's
a bummer. This has been going for a bit. It's going to keep going.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to stop.
People like to think about automobiles as kind of shelf-stable products like a can of beans, but it's not really the case.
Yeah.
They've got to have nearly on-demand delivery, and it's not really on-demand delivery, but it's nearly on-demand
Anytime
delivery.
you're talking about something that is the size of a car and weighs 8,000 pounds. Well, actually, the EVs do weigh 8,000 pounds. I thought I was exaggerating.
How many parts and pieces?
Exactly. And so, like, you can't, even if they were shelf stable, there's not shelf room for them
because
all, right?
the system's not built to handle it, right?
Exactly. There's no buffer to build them into.
No.
Yeah.
And, these companies aren't built with giant lots to store this inventory on, which is why they're shutting down plants, The header from one of these was that Toyota cut production by 40%. And that's not just factories that we have to think about. That's all the people associated with them, like you talked about. It's going to be, I don't want to say interesting, but there's going to be some drastic wars in boardrooms fought over who gets chips when.
Yep. And it's got to happen because everybody's making this move at the same time.
Yep.
EVs are coming.
Yep. Next, Bird has a new electric bike that looks like a Van Moof if you can find it. Now, Bird's that electric scooter company that's famous for their silver scooters. I'm sure you guys have seen them all over, littering city streets wherever you guys are. But they've moved
and sidewalks and ponds and gardens everywhere.
Everywhere. Have you ever tried their scooters?
I don't know if I rode a Bird or a Lime, whichever one they have in KC. I have.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of rideshare scooters. It's fun. It works. I ride them correctly, like in bike lanes and on city streets, because they are a motorized vehicle, and you don't get into as much trouble like when you're bombing sidewalks and stuff like that. You piss people off for a good reason. But yeah, they're a lot of fun. It's a really good form of transportation.
I think it's a really, so that's, whenever we talk about mass transit and kind of the transition to understanding our relationship with carbon displacement in the future, and understanding the ways that mass transit can help fix that, kind of that last mile delivery, like getting your package to your house from the distribution center, getting you from the bus terminal to where you're going is the hardest part of that. And I think scooters are a really neat way to fill in that space, especially with this model of the shared scooters. We've, in our city, we've got some pretty aggressive hills. And so I was trying one out, I was like, I'm going to actually use it for its use case. I'm going to ride it to somewhere. Well, I didn't think about it. And the place I needed to go is at the top of the hill, and I'm a big man, and I got it, and about halfway up, the scooter's like, nah, dog. And it just stopped.
And at that moment, you wished you had a crank and pedals, like an e-bike, to keep it going.
Then what I'd done. Now, speaking of e-bikes, I think e-bikes are really actually the perfect solution in this space. You and your family use e-bikes.
They're great. We have a pair of e-bikes. They're awesome. We are RV travelers as well, and so we actually intentionally do not tow a car with our RV and just take our e-bikes for our local transportation when we get to our destination. But and these are not super souped up ones that we have. In fact, they're price point wise a little bit cheaper than these ones. The Bird ones are going to sell for $22,900 or $2,299. 500 watt motor and a, how many amp hour battery? I had it. Sorry, everybody. 12.8 amp hour times 36 volts. It's 600 watts. So you can ride this thing for about an hour at full output, is what it sounds like when you look at the power. This is actually not a super high powered one. Ours are 750 watt motors with 56 volt batteries and about double the amp hour here. So now they say they get 30 miles of range. 50 miles of range. The spec I could not find on these was the weight. It looks like a pretty lightweight bike, but lithium batteries and motors are heavy.
They can get heavy.
If our bikes weigh 90 pounds or somewhere thereabouts, especially fully laden. If this is a 50-pound bike, then maybe that's where the range makes up. But to me, it reads to be underpowered. I wouldn't want to. You're not going to. 500 watts is a lot of help, but if the bike weighs 3 times as much as a normal bike, it doesn't help as much as you would think. So a 750 watt motor would probably be better on something like this. But in any case, it is made to get you a lot across long, flat distances. This one, I wouldn't. There's better options if you're going to climb a hill. That's all I'm going to say. You would have the same problem on this bike, I think.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of brings us to our topic for the day and why we invited all of you here. You've used a bike in that instance, and I think it's really interesting in that electric bikes are that perfect middle ground.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, and you've talked about how you instead of towing a car with your RV, which is what most people do, you guys have the bikes. Has that changed how you take RV trips or plan RV trips?
100%. I mean, we're definitely planning the trip, choosing destinations based around the capability of our bikes, right? Or at least, at the very least, we're choosing it based on, hey, when we get there, we're not going to have a car, right? So if it's like we want to go to a city, right? We want to go visit Denver. We're not going to go park out in the mountains and e-bike 15 miles into Denver, we're going to have to find a different solution. That'd be actually pretty doable if you had a car, right? So we do form our destination choices around it. But outside of like the travel stuff, I don't live far from the office, and I have for a number since Lofty started. I've always lived within a 15 to 20 minute bike ride of the office.
Yeah.
I still would not commute by bike often, even when I was in better shape and biking a lot more, mostly because I get to work in my dress clothes all sweaty and stuff like that. Totally different world now with the e-bike.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I'm going straight up a hill. Anything within 20 miles is reachable for me, and I will not have broken a sweat by the time I got there.
That's awesome.
If I'm willing to let the bike help.
Yeah.
You can change the power assist level. You can get a workout in. Like I said, it's a really heavy bike. So if you turn the power assist off, you're working 3 times as hard as any other bike out there.
Yeah.
But it's so that's definitely changed my transportation habits, because for me, commuting by bike to a place where that's not like I bring clothes and take a shower when I get there.
Yep.
Commuting by bike is way more in reach on an e-bike.
Yeah.
Way more. You really can get there. You might, if you break a sweat, it's only because of the temperature outside. It's not because of the work you're doing. You can work very little if you want to.
That's really neat. I'm excited to hear that. And I think that there's going to be a lot more people starting to think that way. Tyrell brought up a conversation I've had with some other friends before. There's even like e-bikes for hunters and outdoorsmen now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people.
Yeah, gun mounts on them and bear mace like cannons.
You dual wield your mace.
Yeah.
If you get up in the Northwest, you got to.
Yep.
But it's really interesting to see people start to creatively think of new ways. As the technology changes, people are able to adopt new habits. And then it's the conversation of, well, are they doing the same thing just more efficiently? Or have we, like with you guys in your RV trips, have you started to experience something in a new way because of your access?
It's kind of a new category of thing, really. Yeah. Honestly, it is. And it's really wild. But I definitely, I have not used the scooters as much. I've used those on the rideshare program.
Yep.
I have used the bike share here. And they have some e-bikes in that program, not all of them. But that's been really interesting because I've used that in a totally different way than I would a bike at home.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I needed to get a new set of tires on my car about a year and a half ago. And I rode down to the tire shop. I looked before I went, and I found an e-bike that was parked somewhere in the area. It's a dockless system here, so you just have to find one. You have to find one that someone threw in the bushes somewhere. That's the downside. But I saw an e-bike was within, a quarter of a mile walking distance, so I dropped my car off, hopped on a bike, rode the bike back to the office from the tire shop, a good 3-mile ride, finished out my work day, rode the bike back, picked the car up, left the bike in the bushes where not really. I parked it in a nice area next to a bike park station. I parked it at a bike rack. That's the word.
Yeah.
I parked it at a bike rack.
That's what those are called.
Like a responsible human being. But that was super cool. Normally that's a situation where I call my wife and say, "Hey, can you give me a ride?" Or something like that. And so and that's another one where it was the middle of the day. I was dressed maybe slightly nicer than I am today. Maybe I had meetings that day, collared shirt, jeans, it was hot, and it was totally in range. Completely different thing than I would have done a couple years ago.
Yeah. It's really neat to see how people are changing their habits and movements in cities and otherwise. And I think it's really exciting. And that leads us into the broader conversation about electric vehicle adoption.
Yeah.
And range anxiety is one of the first things that comes up. And I know that that's not as big of a pull for either of us as it might be for some people. But looking at it objectively, you guys thinking about your next car for you and your family, would you consider an electric vehicle?
100%. 100%. Range anxiety doesn't bother me as much. Maybe it's because we're RV travelers already, and like if we're driving more than 300 miles, like my wife is going to make an itinerary and we're going to plan anyway. So we don't mind the planning and having to think around it. It's I would say more than anything, it's less about the state of the infrastructure being there now, right this second. Mm-hmm. I'm confident that it's coming. Maybe that's because at Lofty we have the opportunity to be working on some of that infrastructure, so we've got an inside look at it. We know it's coming. And above all else, it's just that I wouldn't want to be sinking into a gas vehicle. To me, it's about what happens 5 years from now, and I'm not buying a new vehicle with a 5-year horizon on it.
Yeah,
I don't work that way. Some people do. That's not how I work. So, in my mind, it's like if I'm getting a gas vehicle, it better be a lease right now. Because within a few years, I think that'll be there. But for most of our, like I said, I'm within biking distance of the office, so I really don't care about range anxiety at all. I mean, I'll be able to recharge the battery from a ride to the office and back. For me, that takes 20 minutes on a home 120 outlet, But yeah, totally would. I mean, there's just so much upside to it.
We've been looking at some new cars lately too, and it's definitely been one of the things on my mind. But we need more hauling towing capacity, which is where I think kind of the next generation batteries and power technology is really going to be.
They have massive amounts of torque. Like you have no problem pulling the weight. It's just what it does to your range, right?
And so seeing that start to happen, I think, is really exciting because there's a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of people, but there's a lot of use cases where there's going to need to be a density amount of electric vehicles for adoption to increase.
Yep.
And I think this new electric F-150 is kind of the first toe in the water from a domestic company.
They know what they're doing.
Yes, exactly.
They know exactly who that's aimed at. It's aimed at a skeptic.
Yes.
That says, I can actually really I can plug a 240 volt table saw in the back of it. Okay, maybe this is for me.
Or
maybe this is a big kid truck.
Yes. Or even somebody like me who would absolutely love to get into a Tesla X, but I want to tow a boat and throw some kayaks in the back.
Yep.
And the ability to do that, I think, is really, really exciting. I think there's not, and it used to just be on the far horizon, right? Like Elon Musk and Tesla just used to be this man crying in the wilderness, and that's not the case anymore.
I mean, he's still a man crying. In the wilderness. Yeah.
But there's other people out there with him.
It's a wilderness made of money, and it's actually starting to work. Yeah.
But there's a lot of, especially the more progressive fleets that are based in the EU, they're going to be out of gas cars in 10 years.
Yeah.
And we're going to see very similar things happen to domestic production. So whether we want to or not, it's happening.
Yeah, 100%.
It's completely a foregone.
So for me, that's why it's like, yes, I would totally do it today because I see that it's close enough around that like there's not a whole lot of upside in buying a gas vehicle right this second. In my opinion, depends on how you're going to use it. If you live out in the woods, if you need like the power and torque of a diesel engine, like there's that's where that's going to take a while.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while before we have all electric, like heavy lifting construction dump trucks or something like that. I know that there's some exist, but anyway.
But for most people, this is the future.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just. I know you're asking about electric. We're talking about electric cars, but like already own electric bikes. In my opinion, that is an electric. Not my opinion. That's an electric vehicle. It's a different category, but so I'm already there.
Yep.
Love it. Everything else in that range, in that type of thing. If we ever were to buy a moped or a scooter, absolutely go all electric. No thoughts about that. And you've got personal flight. You've got electric aircraft coming out now, like small engine aircraft, but also like personal aircraft that are. I can't remember the name of the company, but it's like an 8-copter VTOL vertical takeoff. Not even going to require a pilot's license. It's like in the same category of aircraft as the giant Everglades fan that you strap on your back with a parachute. I can never remember paragliding versus.
Hope Bubba keeps you alive.
Exactly. That same category of aircraft. Don't even need a pilot's license.
I really think that this is a space where consumer education wins the day because guess what? A lot of gas cars can't get very far without filling up on gas either.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everybody's fine.
I drive a Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah.
Its natural habitat is the gas station.
Yeah, you get it. You get it. Now, we've talked a little bit about kind of our personal horizons for electronic vehicles. What do you see as the future for electronic vehicles 5, 10, 15 years from now?
The tech's going to get better. The infrastructure is going to get better. I mean, just you can... 5 years out, you can take what you see today and just extrapolate it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just fill in the gaps between this charging station and that charging station. There will be many more charging stations. The movements in battery technology, like lithium's not the end all here. There's some really cool news coming out. Tesla's just released news about a new strategy for how they're building their cells and density. The energy density of a lithium battery cell seems really impressive compared to like a lead acid battery, like the stuff we grew up on in our remote control cars. But like it's still like I don't know the exact number, but it's several orders of magnitude less energy dense than burning liquid petroleum. Than like LPG or gas. This is RV anecdote. But like the amount of power it would take for me in a battery, like the wattage it would take to run a furnace or something that puts heat in an RV, we'd deplete 2 big, huge automotive-sized batteries in about an hour and a half. a tank of propane that occupies the same space will keep that thing warm for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So just think about the raw energy difference there. There's a lot of room left in battery technology. So that's going to get better. That's going to translate into range and power, and just however you want to balance that equation. A lot of power and a little bit more range, or not so much more power, a lot more range. It's hard to imagine them getting more powerful. Every 16-year-old kid, 20 years from now, unless something changes, every 16-year-old kid in the world is going to have access to a car that drives with the acceleration of a supercar.
Yeah.
Chevy Bolt, under $30,000. Very modest electric vehicle, still has a 0 to 60 sub 4 seconds.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I'm really excited about it. I think that there's going to have to be some mental changes in the way we think about transportation, just as consumers. But I think that's going to happen faster than it feels like right now.
More than likely.
It feels like one of those things where there's going to be such critical mass. I remember when I was a kid, there was a lot of old-timers that wouldn't drive Toyotas, right?
Right.
And that's over.
Yeah.
We got well past that.
Then they bought one and they're still driving it.
Yes, they still have the first Camry they bought.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't even have to change the oil. But I think it's really exciting. And one of the things, wishing I was a futurist, I think that the way that our cities are shaped is going to be so much more, not just economical, but ecumenical. Yeah. I think the way that we can move in and about and around, the way you can address a food desert once there's an autonomous car, where your kids can be safe in it regardless. There's so many things that we just aren't even able to understand right now. I think work is going to be reshaped. I think willingness to commute, it's going to slam down to 0, and it's going to expand up to 100.
Regularly using cloud technology.
Thank you, Timmy. Timmy updates regularly using cloud technology.
A robot heard us talking about robots.
Timmy wanted to have a voice in the show today.
Yeah. They heard we were talking about autonomous robots.
Well, speaking of autonomy, it does scare me a little.
A little bit.
As they eavesdrop in on us. I think that you can just look at what they're doing here in Fayetteville as part of city planning and how infrastructure is being built. Bike lanes are now incumbent in any sort of road project. Yeah. How are you going to get the bikes down? Now, was that like amazing forward-looking planning by the Fayetteville City Council that e-bikes were going to eat the world? Probably not. I think we were just thinking of regular old active transport, pedaling a bike and sweating. But it's going to work out, and this is just going to add to it. And so, cities are being designed to accommodate this for sure. And
it's really, really exciting. I think there's going to, as safety increases, cost decreases, I think it's going to open up access for a lot more people to be able to move freely in the world in a safe, sustainable way. And that's a win for all of us. I mean, everybody wins when that happens.
There's going to be a lot of passenger vehicles. A lot of people are going to, many people are going to continue. The vast majority of Americans I see for a long time are going to continue to have their commute. A lot of people commute many miles. We're very fortunate that we don't.
We're lucky.
For those of us who don't, though, this micro transport, these mini transport vehicles, that's where electric's going to be kind of the biggest paradigm shift. Yeah, electric cars are different because of the infrastructure you need and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you're still planting yourself between 4 tires and you're going 70 miles an hour down the road. These small personal things are the ones where we're having to figure out, like, okay, how do they fit into an intersection? How do you get them into a dense? How do you get them into a downtown? Where do you park them? Where do you charge those? Do you take them up to the office with you? Those are a paradigm shift that's really, really interesting. And technology is going to play a huge role. I mean, obviously it is technology, but I mean software, right? Logistics and planning and software to orchestrate all of that is going to play a big role in making it work.
Personally but professionally, we're really, really excited about this. And from that side, from that business owner, successful CEO, what do you see as the most exciting thing about electric vehicles and their increased rate of adoption?
Well, I mean, there's the bias aspect of it, of Lofty is working in this space, and so there's a lot of business opportunity for us. Couple that with the fact that the Biden administration has an infrastructure plan that, like, politics aside, maybe that gets passed. Point is that plan does, at least the last reading of it that I saw, had infrastructure spending for 50,000 EV charging stations. So there's a whole lot of infrastructure potential spend going into that. There's a lot of economic stimulus that comes out of that kind of work. And I think most people agree that, like, of all the places that we can spend public money building up infrastructure is
Absolutely.
kind of a win-win-win for everybody
Yeah,
involved.
absolutely. It gives those of us even on the sidelines the ability to have increased economic opportunity,
Totally.
better chances for our kids. But even as it's happening, we get better cities to live in, and those jobs created from it are good jobs. These aren't the same kind of jobs that had to be.
They're
made.
high-tech jobs.
Yeah, they're really good jobs.
Well, you've got you did a social post for Lofty about Tesla's humanoid robot, which the intent there is, I know it's not an EV, but it kind of is, because they're talking about sending it to the grocery store to pick up your goods for you, but also to replace dangerous jobs, right? And when I was anecdotally college internship, I went and worked at a rolled steel mill with overhead brake press machines. A lot of people with less than 10 digits there.
Yeah.
I was not one of them. I came in as an intern to program 6-axis FANUC robotic arms to operate the brake press machine. It was a very uncomfortable thing to be a 19, maybe 20-year-old kid going in this place and talking to a brake press operator who had worked that brake press machine for 30 years and didn't have all their fingers left because of it, and talking about how we're going to put a robot in there. But every single one that we installed, all of those brake press operators got trained up to be control operators for these FANUC robotic arms.
Yep.
Way less dangerous job.
Yep.
In many cases, better pay.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of upside in this kind of technology, because I think what we've seen is, there's going to be some job displacement, but there's also a lot of just job shifting where people sort of are able to move up the value chain, and they're not the machine anymore. They get to be the operator, and that's a big difference.
It's really, really exciting, and giving people access to another opportunity to be successful, while at the same time this giant common good is created of better infrastructure networks for us to move around the world in better ways.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that excites me most about, we can really geek out about, what do transportation pods look like and how will that change things. But in the really short term, this is going to change a lot of people's lives. Yeah. And we're excited to be part of that. This is a space we're really, really proud to be working in, and we're excited as just technologists and consumers to see what happens in the market.
And there's many sides of tech in this industry. There's the tech in the vehicles, the interfaces on the screens, there's the cloud-based applications behind these networks, whether we're talking about the charging networks or the networks of the vehicles themselves. There's the applications that you use to find these ride shares, and I'm talking about mobile applications, and again, the cloud infrastructure behind it. There are so many different places where technology is pivotal in making all these things work together, even on the design and manufacturing side, the process management side, all of those places. So that's where I get really excited about from a business perspective, because that's the world we're working in, and definitely if your organization is working on those kinds of things, that's the kind of stuff we'd love to talk about, because this is where we're able to come in and make a really big impact.
Yeah, that's kind of where our bread and butter is as a company, is taking this expertise that these companies have, that you guys as the specialists in your industry have, and then finding out how that works with software. And so we take all the expertise in your brain, we get it out of your brain, we get it into some software so that your knowledge can be replicated across whatever industry, whatever technology platform you guys are on. And we think electric vehicles is going to be a really fun space to keep doing that in.
For sure, definitely.
Absolutely. So guys, thanks. If you enjoyed this, make sure you like and subscribe. We're going to be putting one of these out every week. So if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that button so you can hear me and Casey talk about more stuff.
Every week. Can they handle it? Can we handle it? Will there be air left in the room?
I don't think there will be.
Okay.
That
right.
was it.
Yeah.
All right,
we'll
guys.
have to get a bigger room. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for everybody. We'll see you next week. How else will people know that you're a serious technologist if they can't see your MacBook Pro?
It's just a dummy. It's not even turned on.
It's one of the
I don't know how to work it. I've got a yellow legal pad just sitting right here.
That would be a great bit.
It's got all my handwritten notes
That would
in
be an
shorthand.
exceptional bit. If it was just
The
the front
CEO
of a
that
MacBook
doesn't
Pro,
use a
you come around the corner and it's just a legal pad.
It's just like, hang on, guys, hold on, let's pause the meeting. Like, all right, I'm ready.
Like printed
So I
out
couldn't
emails.
get the page to turn.
Someone brings you printed out emails and you read them.
But it's in an iPad. They bring me an iPad. Why does he bring you an iPad every day? It's
Don't
a
worry
different
about
iPad.
it. Don't worry about it. We throw it away at the end of the day. Like John Mayer's t-shirt.
It's called value.
That's right.